Welcome to Keep the Line Moving, the podcast where leadership meets life and inspiration. Here we spotlight extraordinary leaders. We're diving deep into how they inspire, motivate, and lead with strategy and empathy to achieve the extraordinary. Here we go. Episode 137 of the podcast, and today we're talking about our shadow, not the one caused by the sun, but something caused by when fear gets in the way of us achieving what we want to achieve. Our guest, Phil Neal, will explain through his entrepreneurial journey, which is fascinating. But what he talks about today will help anyone doing anything in business, in school, on the athletic field, coaching, whatever it is. These are universal struggles that we all have, that this guy had today, that you're going to hear from Phil Neal, in a big way. Gigantic success in the entrepreneurial world, and then a failure equally as interesting, and something we can, again, all learn from. Phil Neal is a 36-year-old father of three who studied to become a school teacher, but also realized he had business acumen, which drove him into the world of being an entrepreneur. Setbacks in business and in life are what define us. And how can we overcome them? The conversation begins now with Phil Neal on Keep the Line Moving. All right, Phil, so you're up in Canada. You're a 36-year-old gentleman. You have three children. What is it like raising your family as an entrepreneur?
Well, it's a challenge. And, I've never been a career-driven guy. I've always had identity goal of how I wanted to become, the kind of person I wanted to become. And that structured how I approach goal setting and my overall career, you could say. So I've turned down many promotions that would have made me move in a different city and, change my kids' environment and be less present as a dad. And I've always been mindful of protecting time island with my children and be very present. But the one thing that entrepreneurship did to me, the blind spot I didn't see coming, is the energy management side of things. Because when you're an entrepreneur, you're leading a company. Well, you don't decide the seasons of your business all the time, and there are times where you have to sprint and just focus on the business bucket. And the mistake that I've done is sometimes not putting boundaries to that sprint and sprinting for too long and not coming back home with the level of energy and presence that I would have loved to have with my kids. And I think it's just normal. I'm better at it. I'm not perfect now, but at least being aware of it makes it, I would say, more consistent. And now I have also compassion about that, because I used to feel shame to not be at my best with my kids, but now I understand that it's part of the journey to learn that.
You know what's really interesting about you? Immediately into how you and I are communicating today, you're incredibly transparent. You go right to where perhaps your blind spots are, spending more time with your family and connecting and having to sprint, right? I'm interpreting everything that you're saying. And that, Phil, if I may, is why people are drawn to you and want to work with you in an entrepreneurial manner. So tell me about your life before becoming an entrepreneur. Let's set a stage here, a foundation, and then why you became an entrepreneur, please.
Sure. So I grew up as the oldest of three. I have a brother and a sister. And by the time I was 12, my father lost his job and he had a lot of difficulties getting another one. So we were very poor, in debt, and I had to be parentified being young. And so that brought me into working a lot and eventually going into sales. And sales gave me, for the first time in my life, financial freedom, I would say. And that was during my university. And at that point, I wanted to be a high school teacher. I was not interested in the material side of business. I never thought of myself as a business person. I knew I wanted to have kids. So instead of doing a PhD in philosophy, I did a bachelor to teach social science. It was kind of my business move at the time. And then what happened is, through sales and winning, national recognitions over and over, I decided that it was okay to have financial goals. I decided that I was super interested in real estate. I started to buy rental properties. And by the time I graduated, I had a couple, and I was torn in between two identities: the teacher and the business guy that seemed to have something to teach me. And one of my colleague, and that was my call to adventure at the time, told me that I would be a wasted potential if I don't go in business. And somehow, to this day, that's my call to adventure, to move from the teaching career to the business career.
How do you explain the fact you're in college to become a teacher? So your curriculum is geared towards that, yet you have the presence of mind or the dual passion to go and buy rental properties. There
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be a connection there. How did that? Is it because of your father losing his job and you having to figure out the savviness to become a business person?
Well, I've always navigated outside my comfort zone to the next growth stage of personal development. I always thought about, I think my edge in all my careers, being with Fortune 500 up to the being an entrepreneur, is I've always thought that the secret was personal growth, and through your own growth and improving your skill set and your soft skills, you could have a competitive edge, and that has been true in my career. So I was kind of following that call of personal growth, and also that sense of responsibility of taking care of my family, and also wanting being very, very hope driven. It's been a challenge for me to be more in the present moment. I was always future thinking. It's my natural state, my strength as a visionary. That brought me to work many jobs at the same time, and that gave me a real sense of confidence with time, that I could do pretty much anything I set my mind to. I was a fast learner. I was comfortable being outside my comfort zone. I wasn't threatened by most of the shadow of failure that, like most people are. And that made me have a very particular relationship with risk. And now, thinking about my personal power, which is something I discovered last year, risk taking is a personal power for me.
You keep referencing the fact that you're comfortable being in your discomfort zone, right? You're
Yes.
comfortable. What does that mean to you? Because there's a lot of people out there listening that are on the cusp of wanting to take a risk, have taken risks and have failed and are scared. But you said repeatedly that you're comfortable being uncomfortable. What does that mean
Yes.
to you? Tell us, like tell somebody who's listening right now what that means to you.
Well, what it means to me is hope is more compelling to me than uh, discomfort. So I was always very, very drawn by my visions of business, of myself, and so that gave me the initial courage to just go outside my comfort zone. And I'm also very resilient and perseverant, so that allowed me to endure. And so the mix of these two were very powerful. And I think as entrepreneurs, we live outside our comfort zone all the time. And the image I like to go back to is, we live on the lining of a coin. We're always trying to bridge between two realities: the comfortable, normal state and the one we want to create. But at any time, the world can flip away our dreams. And this is threatening, especially if we make the mistake of only building our identity as the founder of our venture, and not seeing past that, or making the time to anchor ourselves in other roles in our life, being a father, being from an energy standpoint, uh, anything that makes sense for us outside of business, becomes a real powerful tool for us once that happens. And and us being outside our comfort zone backfires and brings us closer to failure.
So I've been an entrepreneur for 2.5 years, almost exactly, right?
Yeah.
And it's been constant uncomfortable. It's been a
Yeah.
100%. Even when I'm having success, you got to plan for the next piece of business, or prepping for this workshop or that client or that proposal, right? It's extremely hard. It's not for everyone. And there's
No.
days I've questioned, is this for me? That's fully transparent and fully honest,
Yeah.
and I'm honest with the audience as well, that it's challenging at time. It's I should probably talk about it even more to help people. So needless to say, like you, I have had sleepless nights. I have been faced with my shadow, and it's very difficult.
So what I'm seeing right now is entrepreneurship was becoming a trend. So even though it's not for everyone, more and more people are going to think that it's a pathway for personal financial freedom or meaning, and more we see more and more people getting into it. I think in the US, I might round up a bit the numbers, but in 2019 there were about 230 new businesses filed per month in the US. Now it's 430, so it's double that. But the reality is only 2% of first-time founders will build sustainable businesses. The other 98 are going to fail. So most business out there are built by founders who have failed, transform with, use the wisdom, the broken icons they gathered through the experience to become a better founder, and now maybe on their second or third time build a sustainable business. And I think the reason of this high failure rate is people learn about the external journey of entrepreneurship, but they don't see the internal one coming. And the internal one is that the shadow is going to creep in at some point, and there's three levels to it. The uncertainty is the first one, fear, and then unworthiness. And as you were saying, sometimes thinking, hey, am I cut out for this? Every entrepreneur thinks that at some point. And if they haven't thought that, maybe they have been lucky enough to have a fast success, but they're going to experience that at their exit point, because they're likely not going to realize that they need to transform, and they cannot keep just chasing the same growth path that they had before, which is another crossroad that we can get into. But fear, uncertainty comes, there's no exoneration from that. Fear brings you in the failure zone. Unworthiness makes it more probable. And navigating these three feelings is what is going to help entrepreneurs succeed on their first or second try for sure. And it's not obvious when you don't experience that first.
So when you got into officially as an entrepreneur in 2019, what were your initial reactions to building? Because you built a very successful business, $70 million. How did you do it?
So I did it through a pivot, and I think it's how most successful business are made. Because, like I said, there's always a moment of uncertainty, fear, and unworthiness, and then that brings a crossroad where you can transform your business into something that grow. Oh, maybe not. Maybe your original plan is going to work out, but it's not the norm. So what happened with me is I started to be more and more drawn to entrepreneurship. After graduating, I had begun to work as a B2B business development guy in the beer industry for AB InBev, then for Bayer as a pharmaceutical rep. And then medical device for Roche, and then back to pharmaceutical sales. And so I could see that every time I conquered the metrics of success in each of these roles, I was bored. And so I'm not a farmer. I really like the early process of creating something from scratch and defying the odds. And I thought maybe that's because I'm an entrepreneur. So I decided to try on my own. It didn't work. There was too many things to understand. I wanted to get into creating websites, and I had read the 4-hour work week at the time. So I thought, hey, I'm just going to hire VAs and it's going to go well. No, I've just lost my money. So I realized I couldn't do it from scratch. Even though I had good sales experience, I had way too many knowledge gap. So I partnered with a group that they had a business model that they thought would work. A physician was part of the group. Basically what they were doing is they were acting as an external purchasing department for local health centers. And they were helping them save money because they were getting ripped off because nobody was really looking at it. It was nurses. And then we were keeping a portion of the savings to pay for ourselves. And so that was the core idea. We adapted a little bit, and then we were scaling up, but then COVID happened. And because we were buying and reselling from distributor, we were forced to limit our purchasing power to the average of the last 12 months of purchase. So all the new customers we had signed recently, we were onboarding salespeople at this stage, making a couple $100,000 of revenue, but aiming for crossing the $1 million threshold soon. We had to cut them off because of the restrictions. And so, in a nutshell, what I did is I pivoted the model from a purchasing department to an importer of nitrile glove. I started with a niche nitrile glove. I sold it to the government of Quebec here, convinced them because of the COVID craziness to pay me in advance. I took it from the couple $100,000 to $70 million in revenue in 8 months, expanding in Sacramento County in California, big health group with the rest of Canada, even in Africa and Mexico. So that was my rise as an entrepreneur.
Oh man. And there's so many great photos of you on your LinkedIn, of you celebrating, or within some of your videos, I think is where I saw them. It's so neat. You're toasting and There's boxes and boxes of inventory that you just
Yeah.
explained really well. And
Thank you.
then something happened, though. Speaking of shadows, you
Yeah.
had some difficulties. Phil, was it, you were moving through COVID, you were having tremendous success during COVID, and then time goes on, your business partners, and then things started to happen. What happened, Phil? This is fascinating. And forgive me if it's hard to talk about, but I think it really, I think it's going to be part of your TED Talk and your book coming
Yeah.
out in the fall, right? Both of them. I would love to know, right? Giving our listeners now a sneak peek at really what happened.
So what happened in a nutshell is, as soon as we started making real money, and this is a business we had bootstrapped, so nobody had put any money. We were originally four partners, then the three others diluted because they had an agreement with somebody else. So we were mostly equal as a shareholder, and we were supposed to do equal work. But scaling up the business before COVID required most of the work being done by me and the other integrator, who's my partner, Danny, an accountant. So we were kind of doing it all. And so we were supposed to receive commission. When money knocks, you can see the real side of people, and they were very much against any disparity of wealth, and that created an internal founder conflict. And so that led to my final exit a year later, where I decided to switch partners and do something else because I wasn't comfortable anymore. And to go back, well, or maybe to use that as a segue to my concept of the shadows, I had not realized at that point that I was in the shadows, and most of my partners were also in the shadows. So we weren't at our best. Scaling up took a lot out of me. I was not sleeping and being at the middle of all of that pressure, putting all my savings on the line, taking all the risk. So yeah, when the conflict arose, I was in the shadows. I was, in fear based. The founder brought me into unworthiness or imposter syndrome because of the negotiation and the back and forth. Um, and I think that if I had been better at the time at navigating these emotional states and those of my partners, I could have resolved the conflict faster, and really targeting the root of the problem instead of just negotiating on the symptoms.
How did you get yourself out? How did you say,
Yeah,
okay? And you also said something very interesting. You said your partners were also in the shadows, including you. So you
yeah.
maybe weren't navigating, you weren't pointing fingers at them. You were saying the circumstances had all of you there and you couldn't really get your way out, but you did get your way out and you did have a good exit. How did that happen? What was the breakthrough moment?
When you're at that level of unworthiness and shadow, you kind of mix everything in together. So I was feeling in a way like my business failure was making me fail as a dad. Okay, maybe I'm not going to send my kids to Harvard anymore, and these kind of thing. And you feel guilty for the ripple effect of a business failure. And it took me getting to that rock bottom moment to say, you know what, I don't care about being the dad of the year, which was the identity I was chasing for myself as a father, winning dad of the year every year. I don't care about anything related to growth. I don't want to even get back the money or anything I had before. I just want to be a dad in the present moment for now. And so I took my kids. They were 3, 5, and 7 years old at the time. I took them to Cancun with me for a week, just us. It was the best trip we had. They said it was better than Walt Disney, so that's saying a lot. And I was depressed, at the time, and honestly, but that was the beginning of me getting out of the shadows, seeing the actual shadows, learning to codify it, navigate it, and transform, and eventually getting offered to build private equity funds in the defense space, all the way to venture studios and AI, and now getting on track to do my TED talk at Harvard at the end of the year and the book. So
So now what you're doing is you're helping others.
yeah,
Let me read this. This is from you. I believe entrepreneurship is one of the most powerful forces for transformation, both in business and in life. That's why I help ambitious founders navigate the pressure, reinvention, and uncertainty that define the entrepreneurial journey and scale with clarity. So that's what you're doing now, which is you are the chief executive officer of Phil Neal Consulting. Do you see quickly whether an entrepreneur will succeed or not?
well, it's not as clear as that because there's many different factors, and people forget about luck so there's a lot of luck in entrepreneurship. I
Good
scaled
point.
because you could say I scaled because of a pandemic, but then I also was good enough to seize that opportunity. So it's a mix of luck and it's a mix of grit. It's a lot of personal growth. It's an internal journey first, and then there's a ton of skills that you need to have. You need to understand how to go from ideation to seed to growth, and then all the way to structuring a system that can be sold. So it's a vast ocean, and there's no telling when it's going to when the storm is going to arrive. The only thing you can know is the storm will arrive. So what I say to entrepreneur is there's ways to prepare yourself. First of all, by being able to have the vocabulary to name these storms and have a pathway out of them. And then also before you get into going to your venture, or as you're going into your venture, expanding your sense of self, finding your identity anchors outside of entrepreneurship, your personal powers, protecting your sense of self-worth outside your business. These will give you emotional stamina so that you can navigate that storm. So this place, I think, is the root cause of startup failure. So that's why I'm going there right now and preaching my story. Because I always wanted to write a book, but it was always after, oh, I just made an exit. I just made my scale up. Well, I need more mastery of the internal journey before I teach it. Let me get another exit. Let me get back, let me do another surprisingly impressive thing, was how I was measuring my worth before. And then I was thinking last year, as I was doing my TED talk with my coach, how sustainable is that? As a general rule for life, when you're 70, if you're just measuring yourself and your worth through growth, you can't grow more than you could grow in your 20s when you're in 70s. You have to transform and have different metrics for growth. And so what I realized through all of that is that the actual value was more in understanding the internal journey, and that part I had gone through hell and back, and I master it now. And so I decided that I could still teach it even though I don't master all the aspect of entrepreneurship.
Here's my hypothesis. You tell me if you agree. I think that's why you and I get along very well, is because what you just said right there. My business philosophy, hence, which has now become my entrepreneurial philosophy, which is also my teaching philosophy, is this, which you just said. The internal battle is way more significant, important, and complex than the external battle.
Yeah.
And here's what I mean. Like you've mentioned a few times, like metrics, KPIs, like the business outcomes, whether as an entrepreneur or a business person or fill in the blank. If you do not master the internal, it does not matter what the external is. They will be at conflict. At
Yeah.
some point, the rubber's going to hit the road and they will be at conflict.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. You've said it several times. And you even went on to say, the storm is going to arrive. And you need to have, here's your words. I'm listening intently here. You need to have the vocabulary to identify what is going on during the storm. And I know you mean internally.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Absolutely. You need to have a shadow check ritual, which is checking where you are on the spectrum. Am I in uncertainty mode? Well, if you are, I build a tool called the Courage Compass to help you make better decision. If you're in the fear mode, well, then maybe you need to let the world burn for a while. It can be a day, it can be a year, but it could be an hour or so, and just reconnect with your intuition. So you might need to anchor, you might not, and there's a spectrum of tools you can pull from depending on the spectrum of shadows you are in. But at the end of the day, you need to understand that first, because all of your decisions are going to be affected by that, and you're going to kill your own business. You're going to sabotage yourself without realizing it.
2.5 years into this leadership development business that I've started, right? Called
Yeah.
GLG, right? And it's got a podcast, the one you're on right now. We do workshops, we have one-on-one coaching. What do you see in my personality? What do you see in the brief time we've known each other? What do you see in my industry that will be pitfalls, or what advice would you give me? Look at that, way outside my comfort zone, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think first, a general comment. I think knowledge is going to have a very different kind of value with AI, and being mindful of that is a crucial piece of the answer. I think trust, building trust. The opportunity right now is to build trust. So what you're doing is already great. You have your podcast, you have visibility, you are vulnerable, you're getting out there, and you're connecting emotionally with people. So I think that's amazing, and I think you have the right angle of focusing on the internal journey, because that's not something you can understand through knowledge. You understand it through energy. You understand it through having the proper questions, the proper guardrails to safely expand um, your internal strength. So these are positive things I think you have going on in terms of how a business like yours can scale in today's era. Then it comes down to scaling strategy. I think having that foundation is a great head start for sure. Then you need to be in front of people and work on the strategy probably.
Good. Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you for doing that. Okay, are you ready for all-star moments?
Sure.
We will get to all-star moments in just a second. To grow as a leader, you must make intentional choices about how you want to show up for yourself and your team. Are you ready to grow your leadership? The Gargano Leadership Group offers expert coaching, consulting, and workshops rooted in our 4 leadership pillars: curiosity, alignment, optimism, and self-awareness. Leadership starts with forging authentic connections, communicating your values, leading with energy and enthusiasm, and truly understanding yourself. Visit garganoleadership.com to get started with us today. Back to the show. Okay, here we go. True or false, you are a 6'2", 275-pound former linebacker in American football.
True.
Tell us where you played. That was a trick question.
So in Quebec, there's an extra layer. So we have 5 years of high school, then we have 2 years of Cégep. I played in Cégep in Sherbrooke. So we won 2 national championships, 1 perfect season. And at university, I was recruited, but I decided not to go there. I wanted to do martial arts. I done karate, hiking, and jiu-jitsu, and decided to explore other things.
Oh, that's great. Okay, in your entrepreneurial journey, what was one defining moment? When I ask you that question, it was what? What was going on where you said, I'm truly an entrepreneur?
I think it was in the shadows. I remember when I was low in the shadow, I was like, and I was questioning myself, like, why do I do that? I should maybe just go back and get a job. And then I went further down that thought process, and I always came back to, I'm going to quit that job. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And at the time, Nietzsche was what kept resonating with me. Love your fate, amor fati. To There's no perfect fate. There's always issues, and when you feel that as your calling, you have to love the bad as much as the good, and then just trust in yourself.
Okay. Pick one and then tell us why. Ready?
Yeah.
Apple, Airbnb, Google.
Airbnb.
Why?
I think experiences are going to be more and more important. And I have a luxury cottage here in Quebec that I rent. It's one of the most sought after cottage in the whole province. And what makes the big difference is the trend that people want to feel differently. So it's not a no hill experience. And I think Airbnb has an edge there. I don't think that's going to go away.
Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg as an entrepreneur?
I prefer Steve Jobs. I think, is a visionary that to me is inspiring in many ways. So I would vote for him.
What does never give up mean to you?
Never giving up is having understanding of your why behind your goal, because your target will change. But if you have a who and a why in terms of who you want to become because of that target and why you're chasing it, you're going to adapt it. And that's not something you can quit. That's something that has the deeper sense of importance. And that's how I don't quit.
Describe yourself as a leader in one sentence.
The thing that comes to me is connecting with humanity. I think I always think of people as not means to an end. I would kill a business before I kill a relationship. I would not sacrifice that.
Great answer. Great conversation. Phil, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you
on.
so much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And we thank Phil very much for coming on the show. I have several takeaways from this conversation. Let's get to them right now. It all comes down to, on this podcast, we talk about it all the time. It all comes down to the soft skills every single time. If you can master, as Phil and I talked about, the internal, who you are as a person, what is your relationship with fear? What is your relationship with success? How do you do when you've accomplished everything you want to accomplish and you have to create new challenges? All of the content that we talked about today was internally focused. And that's what I asked Phil. You heard me, right? Yes, the KPIs, the business acumen, of course, that's important. But if you don't take care of the foundational elements, which is you and your relationship with yourself, the business will struggle. So that's what we talked about. And Phil, as you saw, his shadows, they got complex. And that's why he struggled a bit with his entrepreneurial journey. And we thank Phil so much for sharing all of that. And here's what I want to leave you with. The storm will arrive for all of us. And that's not, and we also talk about be hope driven, but you have to prepare for the storm. And that's why this work is so important. The work that Phil's talking about, which is getting to know how you deal with discomfort. What are your knowledge gaps? And that's why I appreciated and enjoyed this conversation very much. We thank you. We thank Phil. We thank everyone for being part of Keep the Line Moving this week and all future weeks. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Keep the Line Moving. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Most importantly, share this podcast with your friends, family, and coworkers. It means the world to us. If you have a guest recommendation, visit our website at garganoleadership.com, where you'll also find all our archived episodes. For our marketing coordinator and the producer of this podcast, Savin Narwhal, I'm Chris Gargano. Have a fantastic week, everybody.